Well, a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And by way of introduction, my name is Anthony Simoneau, and welcome to the Inner Property Update live event. Tonight, I'll be joined by my business partner and director of Inner Real Estate Next RE, Michael Simoneau. And the reason for tonight's video is to come to you, to a larger audience, to our whole customer base, to give you a bit of an update of what we're seeing in the marketplace, not just from a sales or rental perspective, but I guess both, and a whole overview of what's happened over the last sort of 7 to 8 weeks during this global pandemic that has been the coronavirus. This is an opportunity as well, and as we said through our emails, for you to participate through a live questionnaire. You'll be able to see that in the top corner of your screens. There will be a little question mark in a speech bubble. If you click on that, send through your questions. We'd love to answer them as we're sort of going through, if it's relevant to what we're talking about, but definitely at the end, we'll try and cover off on as many of those questions as possible. At this point, I'd like to welcome Michael. Michael, good evening.
Thank you, Anthony. And welcome everybody to the live event as well. Just mirroring Anthony's comments as well. It's lovely to be able to do this with our entire customer base. We've been trialing it over the last few weeks, last 6 weeks actually, with our clients, particularly our landlords, and we've received some really positive feedback from that. So I thought it'd be a good idea to be able to share it with everybody else as well. So I might just start off a little bit by talking about what we've been doing as a business over the last 8 weeks since this all began. So as a business, we were quite conservative in the very beginning, so we made sure that we actually started working from home around mid-March on different days. So there was a mix of people in the office, and we were trialing different ways of doing that. And thankfully, we were well and truly prepared come the 29th of March, when the decision was made by the government to, I suppose, go into our version of lockdown. What that meant for us was really not too much changed. We're all able to access all the systems that we have in the office from home. We're still able to answer phone calls like we normally do, still be able to make phone calls. Still be able to transact on a range of different real estate transactions, including tenants moving into properties. We've had to obviously adapt the way we've done that. So thankfully, we've got the paperless technology to be able to sign leases and move people in with paperless condition reports and things like that. So it's almost as though we'd preempted this happening, which is kind of a good thing. But like I said, it's been fantastic about the fact that we've been able to operate as if it's not really even happened. I'm in the office tonight, but we spend most of our time working from home and out on the road, which has been great. That's happened there. Anthony, I might maybe throw back to you. I might just start off and talk about what's happening in the sales market at the moment. Mm-hmm. There has been a fair bit in the media, obviously around what a bit of doom and gloom. There's others talking about some Chinese money coming back into the market and achieving some sort of record prices. What are you seeing at the moment?
Yeah, it's an interesting question that gets asked almost hourly by people to us, and it's an answer that changes daily and weekly, depending on what stage that we were through, that we're gone through the last sort of 7 to 8 weeks. So I guess at the very beginning of when the lockdown sort of started to be announced, there was definitely a shift that we felt around when the Grand Prix was cancelled. There was definitely that weekend there was a lot of people that were taken back by it and thought, okay, this is hit home. This is quite close now. But that also resulted in a bit of a flurry of people rushing to buy properties towards the back end of March and into the first couple of days of April, because there was so much uncertainty around. People will be able to move, will settlement dates be able to go ahead, people that had sold that they needed to purchase to move into. So we found a lot of owner occupiers just wanting to that secure, home is secure. So they were wanting to make sure they locked that in before anything sort of happened. Once that happened, we sort of ended up, we were in April, which it did really start to quieten off. Numbers of inquiries dropped. The sales volume also took a bit of a back seat. But I guess we sort of forecasted that anyway, not knowing obviously what was happening with coronavirus. We didn't forecast that, but we sort of looked at it as we do every year, and look towards each month. And in December and January, we sort of looked at April as a quieter month anyway. We had sort of Easter in the middle of it. We had Anzac Day at the end. We chucked some school holidays in there in the middle. So we forecasted it to be a bit of a more of a quieter sort of month in real estate. And that definitely was just magnifying with what else was sort of going on. What we've started to see, though, in the last couple of weeks, and probably from the start of May, is that there's more buyers back in the market. There's more people that are attending our properties, and more inquiry that are sort of coming through. So we're back probably at the same number of inquiry that we would have seen in January, February, and we're starting to see that volume of sales coming back. Over the last couple of weeks, we're probably seeing the same number of buyers at private inspections as what we were on a standard Saturday open for inspection weekend. And it's quite funny, although we've sort of moved so quickly in terms of technology, it's almost gone back in time to the 80s and 90s, where you sort of meet a buyer at 3 or 4 properties and show them around a number of different properties and sort of see if they like it, sitting down with them, trying to understand what their needs are and trying to facilitate that purchase.
Yeah. So obviously relationships are extremely important at the moment, from sales and obviously from rentals as well. I know we've felt that certainly on the rental front. So obviously we've been doing private inspections for a number of weeks now, but open for inspections, we're allowed to begin doing open for inspections again with a limit of 10 from last Saturday. Has that impacted, I suppose, numbers or levels of inquiry at all?
It probably has in a certain extent. There's obviously people now think that the real estate market's back, so they're going to go out and about a little bit. But I think we're being a little bit sort of cautious at the same time. We don't want to sort of rush back into it completely in the sense of auctions anyway. We want to just sort of, it's hard to do an auction with 10 people. You can have 10 genuine buyers there, which is great, but it is sometimes who do you tell not to come? An auction is a very emotional sort of thing, purchasing a property in auction conditions, as in any market, let alone at the moment. So a number of buyers will have friends and family there for support. So we haven't sort of conducted any market auction campaigns at this stage, but we'll look at those towards the end of this month and the start of next. Open for inspections a little bit the same. We've had some great results by private inspections, and the feedback from buyers has been really positive. So we're still running those, and that's at the moment still our preferred method of showing properties is via private sale. It gives us a bit of better control about who's going through the properties, and we want to make sure that a lot of our properties are tenanted and also owner occupied. So we just want to make sure that we're not just opening up the doors and not having that control. Like, yes, we ask all the questions at the property, but also being in apartments, there's buildings that have got restrictions around number of people in lifts, for instance. Some buildings were only allowed 2 people in a lift at any given time. So just making sure that it's horses for courses, and if a property warrants it, we'll do opens, but if it doesn't, then we'll only do private inspections. And
Sorry, Anthony, I think we've lost you there for a minute. We'll hopefully Anthony will rejoin us there shortly.
Sorry, can you hear me, or did I drop out?
I think we've just lost you temporarily. That's okay. I think you're back with us now.
Yep.
So you're talking about number of people, obviously reduction, a limit of the number of people and lifts and things like that.
Yep.
I might even ask you another question actually while we're talking about that. So number of properties coming to market, we've noticed a bit of a reduction in number of properties, even in our direct vicinity here of the office.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing? Obviously, have people been a bit reluctant to list property over the last little bit while things are being sold?
Yeah, look, there has, and I think REA came out the other day with some numbers around sort of 35% drop in listing volumes over the month of April. And they've sort of seen some listing numbers. So it has affected, I think, a lot of us in the sense that there's been a bit of a reduced supply. Now that's got a bit of a twofold effect on it. I mean, that can stimulate a market pretty quickly with reduced numbers if we start seeing bigger numbers of buyers coming back into the market and those properties selling in shorter time periods. That can definitely create a little mini sort of boom almost. But what we're also seeing is in the conversations we're having with a lot of owners is a lot of them are sort of sitting back waiting to see what happens. Now, there's been a lot of speculation about the market sort of, and I'm not going to get into it and try and, guess the market like some of the banks have with sort of, percentages of 30-40% drops in market value. But, at the moment, what we're saying to our owners is almost encouraging people that are wanting to sell now. Take advantage of this little bit of a hype in the market in terms of buyer activity that's out there, because we don't know what's ahead, right? There's no, and I said this on one of our landlord information I was going back probably at the start of this. 6 months ago, no one predicted a coronavirus or what we just went through and what we are going through. So for us to predict what the real estate market is going to do in 6 months, we don't know. But all we can do is talk about what's currently happening now. There's buyers out and about. We don't know what's going to happen towards the back end of the year if whatever they've predicted does come true. So at the moment, I'm saying to all my owners is take advantage of what we've got, put the property in the market if you're wanting to sell. The worst case scenario will be if you sell your property now, you'll just be 6 months ahead, and it gives you the ability to make better decisions off the back of that. If you wait, well then again you're sort of at the mercy of what comes with it.
Yep. And just I suppose adding to that as well, there is I know the major real estate portals, particularly realestate.com, have come out and as part of the coronavirus piece, they've said that they're willing to I think relist, and Anthony, you probably clarify this, but allow you to relist your property for free. That's obviously a large chunk of where the advertising spend usually goes on those real estate portals. So to be able to relist those for free is obviously a pretty positive incentive there as well.
Yeah, so you've got the ability to relist your property within 6 months. So if you take your property off, so you put it on the market, and you give it sort of a 6 to 8 week campaign, but don't get the result that you're hoping for, you can withdraw that property from market and then relist it within 60 days, 6 months at no extra cost. So you only pay for that subscription, listing fee once, and then don't have to pay it again. So you're almost getting 2 marketing campaigns for the price of one if you don't achieve a result first time around. Yeah,
no, that's great. That's very good.
Yeah.
Anthony, we might change over to rentals now as well, and talk a little bit about that. I might start off with just giving a bit of a snapshot of what's happening in the rental market at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So look, it's been an interesting 8 weeks. It's felt like a lot longer in the rental market. There's been a huge amount of changes that have happened. That's both resi and commercial. Huge number of changes that have happened. We might just focus on residential tonight because commercial's a whole nother kettle of fish. So it's probably worthwhile just focusing on residential.
Yeah. Definitely.
Current market numbers in CBD, South Bank, and South Melbourne are not all that positive. We're looking at vacancy rates around 10%. Some as high as 13%. I saw earlier this week for South Bank. And there's really been 2 reasons for that. One has been the short-term rental market or Airbnb type property. So what has happened over the last probably 3 to 4 years, plus 5 years now, is that a lot of residential property, particularly apartments in the CBD and South Bank, have been used for short-term rental. Whilst the returns on those have been quite attractive, typically higher returns than what you're receiving on a normal long-term residential lease, unfortunately, you do open yourself up to more risk. We've worked with quite a few landlords over the last couple of years on that very issue, and I suppose provided advice on whether they go down the residential path or short-term rental path. And our advice has always been obviously leaning more towards the longer-term lease, mainly around wear and tear. We hadn't really given much thought to a situation like this, but you can see in a situation like this where it's almost a perfect storm of banning everyone from all travel, using an Airbnb. It only came out yesterday in the media, but actually staying in an Airbnb for recreational purposes at the moment, even if you're a Victorian resident, is illegal. So you're actually not abiding by the by the 4 or 5 reasons that you're supposed to be out of home at the moment. So obviously that is a huge portion of the market. Some estimates put that at 10 to 15%, possibly even 20% of the housing stock in the Melbourne CBD and immediate surrounds. That has evaporated overnight. So 29th of March, when we were forced into shutdown, borders were locked down. It all happened very, very rapidly. And unfortunately, all of those properties are sitting vacant today. And all you need to do is jump on realestate.com and you can see the ones that have been converted from Airbnb or that type of rental into now trying to seek long-term rental. And unfortunately, a lot of them have been on the market for 8 weeks and not really moved. We have had some landlords come to us who have actually been quite successful in changing them from Airbnb through to long-term rental, which has been good. That was early on in the piece, and I know we're still getting contacted by landlords at the moment. So I'd encourage anybody that's, I suppose, watching tonight as well that might have an Airbnb property or something that they were using for short-term rental. Feel free to reach out. Happy to talk about a different strategy on potentially marketing that. There are ways of marketing that either as a furnished property or maybe even looking at it as unfurnished if you've got the ability to move some of that furniture into storage. The other reason.
Sorry, I was just going to jump in there, Mike. We've had a couple of situations. One in particular, property up on Stir Street that we just leased yesterday. That exact scenario. So owner had it up as an Airbnb through a company that was handling that management for her, and then she obviously couldn't find a tenant. She's come to us. We've ended up leasing the property out. It was initially furnished that she was leasing it for. We're able to negotiate for her to have the property leased unfurnished, but at the same rental they were advertising it as furnished. And the tenants aren't moving until sort of the middle of next month, so it's given her time to make arrangements, sell a bit of that furniture off, and then sort of give it to other friends and family. So she's thrilled. She's not going to go down that path again of the Airbnb or short-term accommodation path. She's going to lease it out long term, which is always encouraged to have it unfurnished, and she was thrilled with that.
Yeah. No, that's a really good example. So that one there was only on the market less than a week actually before we leased it. And the key with that one there was that it was priced correctly. Knowing what we know now, we priced it effectively right from the very beginning. It was a competitive price for the building. We actually had two tenants who two prospective tenants who both live in the building, I suppose, inquire on the property and come through. And they were able to, secure the property. And like Anthony said, they're moving in mid next month, which is a great result. Like I said, when there's some properties that have been vacant for 8 weeks and, it looks like they might be vacant for a little while yet as well.
Yeah.
So just going back to the vacancy rates as well, the other key factor has really been around, again, shutting down of the borders. So again, the CBD, South Bank, South Melbourne, and all the other surrounding areas in the inner CBD area have, I suppose, been impacted pretty significantly by that. It typically is an area that's a first stopping point for temporary visa holders, because obviously the Melbourne CBD is where the majority of the work is. So what that's meant is a huge amount of property has come back to market, either by choice or not by choice. And by that I mean there's been stories of properties being abandoned, people essentially just finding a flight back home once the announcements were being made by governments, and just essentially filling their bag and jumping on the next flight out and leaving. Keys being left in mailboxes, keys being left in properties. There's been a few stories of that. Thankfully, we haven't had too many situations like that. I think we've had 2 out of all the properties that we manage. And the tenants have been great. They've been, relationship-wise, we've just, made sure that they've arrived home safely. We've been able to deduct the bond to cover all the costs. They've left the keys for us, and and then we've put the property back on the market and looking for new tenants for them. So that's the state of the current market. Unfortunately, not all that positive. But in saying that, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen quite a bit of activity picking back up. So what it's done is, I suppose, when you've got a situation like that where there's so much supply in a market, I suppose it's like any other marketplace really, where you've got price that's driving people. So what we've seen is a very high supply, limited demand, prices are starting to come back. And you're having people like that situation there at Sturt Street, where Anthony said, where someone's moving out of a property that they're currently in Sturt Street into our property, because they're able to attain that one there for probably about $50 a week cheaper than what they're currently paying, sign a 12-month lease, and they've essentially reduced their costs. So that's what we're seeing a lot of, and we have seen a lot of over the last couple of weeks. As people are feeling a bit more comfortable to move around, they're now looking at shopping from their current property and trying to find something else. Whilst the vacancy rates are high, we're expecting a bit of churn to happen over the next month or so.
Just going off, I was going to ask a quick question. But before I do that, just a reminder to everyone that's watching, there is an opportunity for Q&A. So please send your questions through. There is a little question mark box at the top. Click on that, send the questions through. We'll make sure to get to them at the end of tonight. Well, just on that, you were sort of talking about vacancies and those sorts of things. Any sort of I guess tips or on how to secure a rental for prospective tenants, if I can get that word out, and also any tips to owners as well on how to get a property leased?
Yeah, look, so from the tenant side, the best advice I can give is just a complete application. Having an application that has all the information attached, and it's not unfortunately a lot of the programs out there that facilitate tenant applications aren't great at forcing people to attach certain things. But the things that we look for as property managers are, I suppose, everything to verify the information that's on the application. So 100 points of ID. Verification of income, so pay slips, verification of savings, so bank balances, bank statements. If you can get a written rental reference from your current property manager, that certainly helps speed things up. Otherwise, make sure you're providing the correct details of your current property manager so we can get in contact with them and confirm all those details. Current employment details, any guarantee letters that are being provided by parents or friends or family. All those things there certainly help from an application perspective. But especially in the current market, I'd encourage tenants just to reach out to us. If you're living in a building at the moment in the inner suburbs and you're looking at other properties, contact your agents. So contact us. We've got at the moment we're creeping up on about 60 properties that are available, and we would probably be in a better position to advise you what sort of property would suit your needs than, I suppose, just searching blindly on realestate.com. We've got the advantage of having been through hundreds, if not thousands, of properties during our working time. So we're very much able to, I suppose, fit people to different property types. We've had a conversation like that with a couple of tenants over the last little bit, saying, we're looking at upsizing to a 2-bedroom apartment. We want something that's a little bit bigger than the standard. We want to be close to Crown Casino, and I know off the top of my head 3 or 4 buildings that they should be looking in. So we're able to provide that advice. And if we don't have something available in that building, chances are somebody else will, and we can point them in the right direction. So I'd encourage tenants that are looking to relocate to reach out to us. And let us know what your requirements are. We'd then be able to offer up some solutions in terms of the type of property that will suit your lifestyle at the moment. And like I said, now there's never been a better time to look for a rental property. So if you're looking at upsizing from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, you'd probably end up being able to secure something for the same price as what you're paying for your 1-bedder at the moment.
Some kids at home that you wanting for them to move out and finally leave the nest, you can maybe get in contact with us and we can help you out in doing that too.
That's right. Yeah, you can definitely do that as well. Definitely. From landlord's perspective, look, again, just making sure that you've got the right agent in place to be able to service those needs. Where, as Anthony said, we've gone back to the old school methods of following up every single inquiry that comes through, taking people on private inspections. We have been able to do open for inspections for a week now, but they still have not been as effective as our private inspections. So we did 49 inspections last Saturday, but only received 2 applications off the back of those 49. This week, we've done probably, I haven't even checked the numbers, but it would be similar to the numbers that we've done in one day. So we would have done 40 to 50 inspections since Monday, and we've received over a dozen applications and approved 4 of those, which 3 of them are leased. So you can see that private inspections are far more successful at the moment than what open for inspections are. And that's really just because there are a lot of options out there for people. So for a tenant that's shopping around, to choose from thousands of different properties and thousands of open for inspections becomes a little bit difficult. Whereas if it's a particular time that's been set and arranged and it's a private inspection, there's nobody else there, the tenant feels comfortable, the tenant's able to spend a little bit more time wandering through the property, and we found that that's been a successful method.
A couple of those things too. Just sorry to interrupt again, Mike, but there's a couple of those on those things you're mentioning about open for inspections again at private inspections. I know, having spoken to speaking to buyers and tenants that come through properties, and even when I've been out there looking at properties as well. If you've got on a Saturday, half a dozen. Sometimes you speak to some people and they're looking at up to 15 properties in a week, on a weekend, on one day. By the end of it, they'll become a bit of a blur. So you actually don't know what what you're seeing or what you have seen that day. And with rental inspections and sales inspections, we only may give you a window of half an hour at most to look at that property. When really you probably spend more time at a shop looking at a piece of clothing and trying it on, and a pair of shoes that you try on and walk around in for half an hour in a store. So you spend more time on that than what you would on a property that you're about to purchase to move into, or a rental that you're about to take a lease out on. Whereas a private inspection, we probably give you the same amount of time, but it's you that's in there, right? So you've got that opportunity to walk through it, feel as if you could live in that property, rather than having, at the moment, obviously restricted numbers in properties, but there could be 3 or 4 other people in there that are walking through the property, and it just becomes a little bit more uncomfortable. Whereas, private inspection setting, it's only yourself that's there, or whoever you bring along with you. So it gives you that better feel of a property.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. You're right. And that also reminds me, video inspections, extremely important. We've been doing those on new properties for probably a couple of years now, but they've become the norm and a requirement for properties too. Again, it's enabling people to inspect the property before they actually physically inspect the property. It was really important, obviously, when people weren't able to leave their homes, or there was a disincentive for people to really leave their homes. But we're still finding that's successful as well. And the views that we're having on those videos are higher than they've ever been. Previously, they weren't really being viewed all that often. It was probably something that a tenant would just check after they'd viewed the property and see whether it was something they wanted to put an application in on. Whereas now we're actually getting quite a few views before people are actually coming in inspecting. So that has certainly changed. And then obviously the last point for landlords is price. We've mentioned it a couple of times already. The ones that have been successful are the ones that are priced correctly. And we're not asking landlords to price things ridiculously low in order to move them. It's just about being competitive in your building or in your area. We've got the advantage of having properties, multiple properties and comparable properties available in the same building at the same time. So we know exactly where the market is. So you essentially want to be the first one to be leased in the building, and in order to do that, you either need to have a differentiating factor, so the property needs to be presented differently to the others, typically better, or beat the others on price. They're the two measures. Yeah.
An example of that is a property on Collins Street that we got. So we leased it at the start of. Was one of our previous clients that came to us that had purchased the property off us, and he was doing short-term accommodation there. Was quick to act, removed it from the short-term accommodation market. We put it up on the rental market. There was only one other one in the building at the time for lease. Compared it to that, put on the rental market. We leased it in I think it was about a week and a half. The property was leased. This is going back at probably the end of March, start of April. We've now picked up another property off in that building as well. We've sat down with the owners the other night to have a chat to them about sort of marketing and do what we do and have a look at what's available. There's now 15 properties available in that one building. So the conversation very much changes about, rather than trying to achieve a great result, which is what our key is to do, but at the same time trying to do it in the shortest amount of time possible, so there is no downtime for that property. We can get it leased, get a tenant in there, so it reduces their days on market, so they're not having a large period of a vacant property. But at the same time, looking at what's there, where the other ones sit, what's the highest rental, what's the lowest rental, where does yours sit in comparison to the highest and lowest, and pricing it accordingly.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, Anthony, I might do is I'll just put up a slide on the screen. So I want to talk a little bit about the Omnibus Bill. Again, not in too much detail, but I'll skip over just some of the points that have been raised there. part of the Omnibus. So the Omnibus Bill is the Emergency Measures Act that's been introduced by the Victorian Parliament. It covers a whole range of different issues, but in particular, obviously, there's a direct impact on residential leases in there. There's been a lot of media attention about the fact that there is a 6-month moratorium on evictions. And yes, we've fielded a lot of questions on that as well. What that essentially means is that evictions have been banned. However, there are some exceptions. So those exceptions apply where I suppose there's threats towards people. There's danger associated with either the people that are in the property or the property itself. There's a blatant refusal by the tenant to pay rent, or the property's been sold. So there's a whole bunch of different reasons that we can still ask people to leave properties, and in most of those circumstances, they've been okay. I know our office has gone through some of the new termination applications to VCAT, and those hearings are actually being scheduled for the next couple of weeks. I've got one myself next week. So what they're encouraging people to do is obviously engage in conversations between landlords and tenants to make sure that we can reach a reasonable agreement. Consumer Affairs has been great as well around how they've put measures around hardship and who needs to enter into negotiations with around rent reductions and payment plans. So they've put a really simple measure in, which is a measure that we've been using for quite some time anyway, around affordability of rental, where your rent should not be any more than 1/3 of your gross household income. So essentially, where that kind of comes down to is, if you're paying around $2,000 a month, your household income your gross household income, this is pre-tax, should be greater than $80,000. If your household income is less than $80,000 and you're paying $2,000 a month in rent, then they consider you to be in hardship. And that's where we enter the conversation. And obviously, it moves based on what the rental is, but that's the measure that we've been provided. Which, like I said, it's been fantastic because we can assess applications quite quickly, and it's also helped, I suppose, facilitate conversations with landlords too, where tenants genuinely are in hardship. There's been some situations where people haven't been eligible for JobKeeper or JobSeeker based on their visa status. So landlords have been great in passing on some sort of reduction to tenants. But we are asking both sides to be mindful of each other. We've had situations where tenants have asked for rental reductions and landlords themselves are in financial hardship because they may have lost their job, or a partner may have lost their job. They've obviously still got outgoings to pay on the property, whether it be owners' corporation fees, council rates, water rates, mortgage repayments. So we're just asking both sides to be mindful of the fact that we all have expenses here, and just making sure that we work through it together. And I've got to say, really, we haven't had too many issues. I've heard of some agencies having huge numbers of issues, and I suppose a lot of pressure being pushed back onto property managers around that. But I'm thankful to say that we really haven't. And I think it's really come back to the fact that people are all being very understanding and reasonable at this time. And again, just protecting those relationships that we have with both our landlords and our tenants, and just working through things, on a case-by-case basis. That's the most important thing. Like I said, there's a few other points there as well. But look, I would encourage any clients that are listening, or even people that are listening who may be going through these sorts of situations themselves, with whether it be with another agent, we're here to be contacted. More than happy to talk about your specific situation. These are the sorts of things that I suppose we can provide this information, but that every single situation is different. That's what we've noticed, and as a team, we've been working through close to 100 different situations with tenants and landlords on over the last 8 weeks. So if you want to reach out to us and ask for some assistance, we'd be more than happy to help with that. Like I said, it's one of those areas where we're all learning and we're all trying to work through it together. And yeah, like I said, we've experienced it already, but if we haven't, then more than happy to brainstorm with the team and try and come up with a solution, because we're trying to work through it obviously all together.
Definitely, yeah. And there's always going to be more to learn, I think, out of all this. It's not going to be, we're learning every day. Things are changing every day. I mean, in the last sort of 7 or 8 weeks, and what we're probably experiencing from a property management level, but it was almost daily where things were changing. There was different things coming out, a lot of reporting coming out too, a lot of reports that were saying one thing in the paper, and then the next day something else. So it was a lot of guessing at the start to sort of see what these things would look like. But I think the job that you've done and that our property managers have done during this time has been amazing, and got a really good understanding from both sides what this bill means and what we can and can't do, and also wanting to help. I think that's the most important thing, that we are here to help. We're not here to pick sides or anything like that. We're all in this together, and that's what we're trying to do. There was a question that came in before, Michael, and I've just posted it. It was just regarding some maintenance that was sent through. Our details will be up at the end of this presentation. Feel free to email either myself or Michael, and we'll follow those up for you, and find out when we can get. Just asking about now that the lockdown has been eased, when we could have a technician sent out to the property. So we can get onto that pretty much ASAP for you.
So that's a good point, actually. So with maintenance, what we've been doing with a lot of landlords and tenants is explain to them that if there is a non-urgent maintenance piece, we have put it off where possible. Mainly for a couple of reasons. It's been a bit challenging with some trades getting them out, because some companies have made a decision not to operate in a face-to-face sense. So a lot of the trades that we work with have been okay, but some of them have been, I suppose, erring on the side of caution and will only go to a vacant property, purely because it becomes quite difficult to socially distance inside apartments. So we have asked tenants to be, I suppose, patient where there's a non-urgent maintenance piece. We are, like I said, we are coming out of those restrictions now, so we are starting to get, I suppose, we're trying to get through those as we can. But just asking tenants to be a little bit patient with us on those ones there. Obviously, we don't want to put anyone at unnecessary risk for a minor issue. If it's an urgent maintenance issue, that's a completely different story. We'll make sure that the tradespeople coming through take the necessary precautions and do what they need to do, and we'll get it addressed within 24 hours as it needs to be. But if it's a non-urgent maintenance thing, then it's something that's certainly not going to cause too much hassle to the tenant, and certainly not going to cause any undue damage to the property, then we have asked people just to be a little bit patient with us on those ones there, just until things settle down and we know where we stand with those.
Yep.
Okay, great.
There's no other questions coming in. Is there anything else you wanted to sort of add, Michael, at this point? Again, I encourage anyone that's watching, please send through, a question. We'd love, Michael and I can sit here all night and talk. We're estate agents, what we'd love to do, but we'd love to sort of get some participation from our audience that are watching. If you've got a question, send it through. That's from doing these previously, that's the best engagement that we have, is when we're getting some live questions thrown at us.
Yeah. No. Well, while we're waiting for a few more questions, so just in terms of if there's any clients listening, because obviously this has gone out to all of our previous landlords, people who have inquired on properties, people who have purchased properties off us, but purchased properties, or even just come through and open for inspection. If you are a landlord now and not with our agency, I'd encourage you just to give us a call and have a bit of a chat about the situation. I'm more than happy to provide some, I suppose, obligation-free advice on anything that's going on at the moment. I don't know of one landlord at the moment who hasn't had a conversation with their property manager over the course of the last 8 weeks. I know we've spoken to, I'd say, 90% of our landlords. If you haven't had a phone call from us in the last 8 weeks, it's probably a good thing. Because there hasn't been any news about the property. Tenants paying rent and everything's okay. But if you are in a situation where there's a little bit of uncertainty, or there's something that's come up, and you want a second opinion, I'd encourage you just to give us a call. Again, not for any particular reason, but just sometimes it does help to get that second opinion. Particularly at the moment, because like Anthony said, things are changing so rapidly that we are learning things on a daily basis. Thankfully, things have slowed down over the last couple of weeks now that the regulations and the new act has been released. But I know in the early days, information that was being released by Consumer Affairs was being updated within 24 hours with something that was completely contradictory. And there was a lot of confusion in the industry about that sort of thing. And we've just really tried to make an effort as an agency to keep on top of those communications and use either video or even just emailing out to our database, what we understood the situation to be at that particular time. I feel as though we're in a good position to be able to answer most of those questions. So if you do want that second opinion, we're always here to help. Yeah, now, Anthony, I've just noticed that there's another question that's come through. I'll publish this and I'll read it out as it comes through. So I agreed to give my tenants some rental reduction for 3 months from March to June. The situation still has not improved yet, and I'm afraid my tenants will ask for a further rent reduction that I cannot afford to approve. What options do I have as a landlord? All right, so great question. We haven't got the person who's asked the questions come through as anonymous, but that's okay. So really good question. So there's a couple of things available to you. Firstly, need to reassess the situation with the tenant. So we're saying that the tenant wants an extension past the initial 3 months. We need to understand what the tenant's situation actually is. If the tenant is in a situation where they're, say, a temporary visa holder, and they're not able to access government benefits and they're waiting to go back to work, then we need to understand what that looks like and where when they're actually going to go back to work. We can't extend that period of time indefinitely. I know the hospitality workers are all pretty keen to get back, and there's word that they're going to return back to work on the 1st of June. But again, in what capacity? It might be a bit of a limited capacity. They're expecting lower numbers of people, restaurants and things like that. So we need to be cautious about that. I'd encourage you to reach out to your property manager, but if you feel more comfortable reaching out to me, I'm more than happy for that to happen. We'll pop up our details shortly on screen. Actually, I'll pop them up now, so that way you've got my details up there. So mine and Anthony's details are there on screen now as well. So feel free to send me a text message, give me a call, send me an email, whatever you feel comfortable doing. I'm happy to look at the particular situation itself. Like I said, it is a bit of a moving target. We have come out of this situation a little bit faster than what I think the government expected, which is why they've started easing restrictions and allowing us to move about and allowing businesses to operate again. We should see things improve, but it might be a slow recovery. So we might need to just, assess the situation with the tenant. On your personal affordability side, there are some things that are available from the Victorian government, namely the reduction in land tax. So there's land tax deferrals and reductions in land tax. I would encourage you to go to the Consumer Affairs website or to the State Revenue Office website to have a look at what benefits are available to you. They're fairly detailed on there. Again, if you want a little bit of guidance on that, reach out. I'm more than happy to help there. If it comes to it as well, it's also worthwhile speaking to your bank about potentially getting a deferral of mortgage repayments. The only disadvantage with that is the fact that you are still liable for the interest on the loan, and a lot of people haven't really taken up that option on investment properties because obviously the interest continues to accrue, and you're essentially paying a larger loan balance at the end. So it's not an ideal situation. But again, this is one of those situations where we need to understand the specific situation that the landlord's going through, and then also the situation that the tenant's going through, and try and find a solution that's going to work. And look, the situation might be to end the tenancy and look for a new tenant, and ask the tenant to move into a more affordable property, which they should essentially be able to find at the moment. So all options are on the table. We just need to understand the specifics of the situation. Anthony, I'm gonna switch to you for a minute. I think I've just had a question come through on the phone. Have you got any questions there at all?
No, I haven't got any questions coming through from my end, and there's nothing there are no fresh ones that have come through. I guess just sort of adding on to that, what you said before, that a lot of conversations that we've been having lately, that I've been having lately with landlords that are looking at selling and that sort of stuff, they haven't. Well, they've gone and had a chat with their bank, and I was actually having a chat with a lender from the Commonwealth Bank the other day. And there's obviously some big hurdles that you've got to jump through to even get sort of a deferral on your mortgage repayments. So they're probably putting in a lot more stricter criteria than what than anything else. So yeah, there's a little bit of pushback from the banks, even though they say they're going to do it. You've got to meet certain criteria on that front. Okay,
I do. So I've got another question that's come through via text message. So this is one of our existing landlords. So I'm a landlord and I've given my tenants in the property a 6-month rent reduction. What happens after this time? Does it automatically go back to the rent I had previously? So in that situation, these are the sorts of situations we're going to be working through next. So we've dealt with the first wave of requests for rent reductions from tenants, negotiated with landlords and agreed to those for a period of typically 3 to 6 months. There has been some shorter term ones in there, but most of them have been 3 to 6 months. After the 6 months, yes, the rent does default back to what it was previously. So what we've essentially done is made an amendment to the monthly rental that's being paid, and we've already put in our system that essentially the rent will return back to the way it was. We have seen some situations where there's been a deferral of rent. Those ones there are less favourable, because what happens in those situations is, whilst for a period of 3 to 6 months you might see rents reduce, what happens is that rent is then deferred over a period. So what it actually has the effect of doing is, in 3 to 6 months' time, your tenant will be paying their normal monthly rental plus some to make up for that deferral. So it actually puts the tenant in a far worse off position than had they just continued to pay. Because essentially their rent may have gone from $2,000 down to $1,000 per month because you've given a 50% deferral, and then you've gone and switched it to back to normal after 3 months, but then they've got to make up that $1,000 deferral over, say, the next 6 months. So their rent could actually jump from the reduced amount down to $1,000, then back up to, say, $2,500, which is higher than what they were paying originally. Now, if they haven't returned to work, or they're still relying on some sort of government benefit to get by, that could have a pretty negative impact on them. So we just need to be mindful of that. But again, just encourage you to reach out to myself or to your property manager. We're going to be able to work through those situations with you individually. And as you can see by the questions that are coming through at the moment, every situation is different. We've got a landlord here that sent us a message through saying there's a 3-month deferral, and the tenant's asking for longer. There's one on the text message saying that there's a 6-month deferral. What happens? Every situation has been treated individually, and therefore we need to treat the outgoing outcome of this individually as well. So we've obviously made detailed notes on each of the situations, and we're going to re-engage with tenants and landlords as we approach the end of those agreement periods.
Yeah. I think a few people are sending through text messages rather than using the Q&A, but
that's fine.
Where it was sort of easier. One of the questions that's come through is, would you recommend, this is from a buyer, would you recommend waiting or purchasing now? This is a question that we always get, and I think the gist of it is, should they wait to see what happens with, for people predicting about the market, and if the market's going to sort of drop in value? My answer to that question is always, if it's the right property, then why wait? Now, property is always a medium to long-term hold anyway, unless you're buying to do a development on that property, or buying to renovate to flip it, which is in short term. But property is always a medium to long-term hold. So whatever may come up in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, is, I think you shouldn't sort of speculate that sort of short-term thinking. It's buying the property that you want. Does it meet your needs? Does it meet your criteria? Does it suit the stage of life that you're in at the moment? And then pursue it. Set a budget. That's where you want it to be. If you purchase a property, then that's the ultimate outcome. A lot of people that sort of say, I'm going to wait to the bottom of the market. No one knows when the bottom of the market is. You only know that once the market starts going back up again. And it's like people that say, I'm going to sell at the peak of the market. Well, you don't know the peak of the market until the market starts coming back down again. So it's people that chase peaks and troughs. You're always basically going to be chasing. So if you found the right property, and this is actually an interesting sort of question that's come through, because I was helping a friend of mine who's looking at buying a property at the moment, and he sort of had some reservations around that. And the answer to the question was back to him is, well, do you love it? And he goes, yeah, I do. And then we'll go buy it. Why wait? Why miss out on something that you love? Because there may not be that same opportunity in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years' time. You'll be kicking yourself every time you drive past it. Yeah,
that's right. And look, and to add to that, we saw that happen 12 to 18 months ago with the bit of correction that we had in the market off the back of the 2016-17 boom. And what we saw was, if people were in a position to be able to hold property, they did. So what ended up happening was a lot of people didn't list their properties on the market when they had the opportunity to. There was a whole bunch of buyers out there that were looking for property to try and buy, but they couldn't find the ideal one. So they were either settling for something that was less than ideal, or ended up paying more for what was there and available. And then as soon as that started filtering through and more stock slowly came to the market, then we just saw prices skyrocket. And pre-COVID, and I think we're going to be living in this pre and post-COVID world, but pre-COVID, I know, and Anthony could probably mirror this, but January, February, and the start of March were achieving sales prices in our marketplace and in the surrounding areas as well, comparable to the peak of that boom that we had back in 2017, 18.
We're seeing in our marketplace in areas of South Bank and CBD, we were seeing prices that we'd never seen before. We were seeing amazing results happening, and we were starting to finally see this shift in the apartment market, where people are actually starting to see some capital growth in them and starting to see some really good some really good prices. Values still seem pretty relatively good, being so close to the city. You could buy a 2-bedroom apartment in South Bank, beautiful views, good size, a good size apartment for under 600. Now try and find a property within 15 kilometres of Melbourne, the CBD, for less than 600,000. Not going to happen. So we were finally, we were pretty pumped. We were like, this is great. Like, this is an awesome time to be marketing properties and helping people purchase properties in the area. And also for our owners, they were achieving some great results, and we're thrilled. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. All right, Anthony, I'm going to pop our details up on the screen, because we are getting a few text messages and things coming through, and it doesn't seem like there's any more questions coming through the Q&A. So we might leave it there. I suppose use as an opportunity just to remind you, if you've got any questions at all, whether it's, you've got a property that you're thinking about selling, or you're a buyer out there looking to buy something and not quite sure, you want to ask Anthony those questions, or you want to ask from a rental front, from myself, for landlords out there, or even tenants looking for things, and and want to try and take advantage of that, I suppose that place finder service that we're offering to tenants, then feel free to reach out. If we can't help you directly, we'll pass it on to the team as well. We've got the whole team there, obviously, ready to help out. And just actually, I'm gonna come back, because there is a question that's come back. Sorry, Anthony, I'm gonna go back to this, because we'll address the question. And if there are any others, we'll leave this one as our last one. But if there are any others, like I said, definitely send them through via text, and we can address it. Sorry, I'm just going to pop myself back on the screen. So it's just one about the rent relief grant. Can I skip my rental payment once it's approved and you receive the money from the government? So no, that's not the intent. the way it works with the rent relief grant is that it is to subsidise the reduction that you've already had in your rental. But with that one there, again, so it's come through, it's obviously a specific case. I would engage directly with your property manager on that one there. Speak to the property manager. The property manager will have all of the details with those ones there. I don't want to, I suppose, cover off on specifics. We haven't had a huge amount of the rental relief grants come through yet. I know they're still being processed by Consumer Affairs, so they have been a little bit slow at getting those done, but we're hoping to start seeing those by the end of the month. So I would encourage you to direct that question directly to your property manager. If I suppose you're not getting any response there, happy for that to be directed to me, and then we can certainly help out. More than happy to help with that one. Perfect. All right. So yeah, like I said, just wanted to say thank you to everybody who has attended tonight. It's been yeah, look, it's been great to be able to answer these questions in a live format. As we've said, we've been doing these for the last 8 weeks for our landlords, and we've received some really positive feedback. So we decided to open it up and I suppose open up to a larger audience. And yeah, look, the engagement's been fantastic. So so thank you so much for all of your questions tonight. If there's anything more that you need from us, please feel free to contact us on our mobiles or via email. As I've said, if we can't directly answer it, then we'll work through it as a team, and we'll certainly get back to you. But thank you, everybody. Thank you, Anthony, for everything tonight as well in terms of presenting on the sales side and letting us know what's going on there. And we hopefully we'll come to you quite soon again.
Thanks.
Thank you.